Councillor Patton and Councillor Carlson, have you joined us again? Oh, good. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so let's get started. We'll resume with 7.4 Parks and Recreation Fees and Charges, and this is for Lori.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can everybody see my screen okay? Shared screen? Great.
Yes.
Sorry, just one delay here. Here we go. Okay. This council report is a follow-up report from the council presentation on November 30th, which highlighted the Parks and Recreation market research and key findings. Staff also engaged the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee on March 2nd. As a reminder, Summerland's fees and charges have not been updated since 2012. As reflected in this chart, there has been very little change in revenues over the last 10 years. However, the expenses have steadily increased. The investment level has grown by $180,000 between 2010 to 2019 due to continued rising costs. The purpose of this report is for Council to review the proposed Parks and Recreation fees and charges, and for Council to provide staff direction if changes are required. The principles and directions as compiled by staff from the Council discussion at the November 30th meeting are outlined in this Council report. I won't go through them line by line, but if there are any comments or points of clarification that Council wants noted, please advise. Staff have compiled and included a summary of the comments from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee in this Council report as well. The proposed fees and charges as presented in this report are based on the principles and directions and input from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. Staff will return to a future meeting with the fees and charges bylaw 98-001 Schedule I for Council's final consideration and adoption. So starting first with proposed admission fees. Admission fees are the rates for single admission, 10 ticket passes and monthly passes for public swimming, the health club, which is the fitness room and pool combined, and public skating. Proposed rates reflect fee adjustments based on 25-cent increments to the single admission, and then a formula is applied that is consistent across all facilities. And those are calculated at a 10 ticket pass, which is 9 times the single drop-in rate. So if you buy a 10 ticket pass, you get 1 free admission. The monthly pass is calculated at 10 times the single drop-in rate. So if you go more than 10 times per month, it makes sense to buy a monthly pass. The 3-month pass is calculated at 3 times the 1-month rate with a 15% discount. The 6-month pass at 6 times the 1-month rate with a 30% discount, and the 1-year pass with a 35% discount. Staff are proposing that new pass options for patrons which haven't been offered in the past are included. These are a 10-ticket family pass for the pool, preschool monthly passes for a pool, family passes for the health club, which is, as I mentioned, the fitness room and pool, and 10-ticket passes for public skating and noon hour hockey. So those are passes that hadn't been offered in the past. Based on these changes, when considering increases across all fee categories, the average increase is approximately 12% for public swimming, health club a 4% increase, and public skating a 10% increase. Staff are proposing that this increase is implemented in 2022 and is held for 3 years. It's frozen at that rate. And then staff are recommending that another admission fee review is conducted prior to setting rates for 2025. So shifting from admission fees to rental fees, staff are recommending that rental fees increase 3% each year in 2022, 2023, and 2024, and that another full review takes place prior to setting fees for 2025, which would include another review of market. Exceptions to the 3% increase are for fees that are significantly lower than the market. These include a proposed increase of 10% each year for the next 3 years for Masters Swim Club, early morning arena use, a arena dry floor for sport, as well as upping the theater rehearsal and theater technician rates to $40 an hour to be consistent with the market rates and costing of hiring a theater technician. As outlined in the council report, staff have proposed new rental fees for items that have not been included in the fees and charges schedule in the past. I'll quickly go through these, which include rental fees for the Aquatic Center small meeting room, a rate for private or commercial bookings for the curling club dry floor, playing field hourly fees for ball diamonds and soccer fields. Previously, slow pitch fees were a flat rate for each team in the league. Fees for booking parks for private use, like a wedding or a family reunion, as well as a commercial park booking for one-off events that benefits a business. A seasonal per month rate for the Summerland Pickleball Club, exclusive use of the pickleball courts for their bookings. A fee for the small ring, the warm-up ring at the rodeo grounds. Parking lot fees for large and small parking lots. Rental fees for the upper floor main room of the Arts and Cultural Center to be implemented in September after the renovations have been completed. And these fees have been reviewed and supported by the Summerland Community Arts Council, who will be administering these rentals. Upon further review of other communities, there are proposed new rates for film permits and applications. This, along with the addition of the parking lot and park booking fees, brings us more in line with film production fees in other communities. Staff are proposing recovering costs for piano tuning and in tandem music fees, and the authority to charge at cost plus a 15% administration fee for extra labor, equipment, or services when required for a booking. Staff are also proposing an increase of the damage deposit for the rodeo grounds from $100 to $200. As previously discussed, there is a request for Summerland to be consistent with many other municipalities to provide free pool and fitness room access for Sport Canada carded elite athletes. And a few additional notes to highlight are that park bookings for nonprofit community events, field bookings for local youth groups, and court bookings for tournaments remain proposed at no charge. Staff investigated the electrical cost for sport field lighting, which was calculated at just over $4 an hour. A proposed booking surcharge is not currently included. However, council may want to direct staff to add that into the booking fees. Staff corresponded with indoor minor sport user groups to discuss the proposed 3% increases, which was a direction of council. The general consensus was that this was deemed a reasonable increase after 10 years of no increases. The only group that expressed concern was the Orca Swim Club, who is anticipating a challenge to regain members due to the impacts of COVID-19. Their inability to fundraise through hosting meets has been a financial burden to the club. Staff also corresponded with slow pitch teams who had questions about the net financial implications to their leagues. The representatives generally understood the logic and the changes to the fees based on the number of fields and the times booked versus a flat team rate. The Master Swim Club fully understood that they have been undercharged for many years and support the 10% increase over 3 years. In discussions with the Pickleball Club, they advocated for a per member rate structure for access to exclusive court bookings for the Pickleball Club programming. This is a similar format in Penticton, Kelowna, and West Kelowna. Starting at an $8 per member contribution and the current 140 members, that would equate to a seasonal booking fee of $1,120, which is a significant increase from the nominal fee charged in the past of $300. As recommended by the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, it is suggested that the new fees and charges would be implemented in 2022, with the exception of the Arts and Cultural Center fees to be effective post-renovation, which is targeted for September. It is also suggested, as previously mentioned, that admission fees are frozen for 3 years. Rental fee increases for each year at 3% per year for most categories, and that a full review is conducted again prior to setting the 2025 fees. A high-level calculation of the impact of the fee increases is approximately $25,000 for 2022 if attendance levels and user group bookings have fully recovered from the COVID-19 impacts and are similar to the 2019 activity levels. That concludes my presentation, and I welcome any questions and recommendations for council for any changes prior to returning to council with an updated fee schedule. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Starting with Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The only comment I have is on the phrase admission fees frozen for 3 years. I'd rather see a bylaw that just didn't address any increases rather than to use language like that that might hinder any future councils. If a fee isn't scheduled to rise, then it's de facto frozen unless council chooses to address it. It's just how I would look at it.
Okay. Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. I have a few questions, if I may. So for youth programming on playing fields, there's no charge for that, is that correct? For rental of playing fields?
That is current practice. That's how it has been for many, many years.
Okay.
And that is being proposed to be continued.
Okay, and is it the same in Penticton, do you know?
There is a small, I'm going to say about a $5 an hour rental fee for sport fields for youth, local youth in Penticton.
So just follow up then, so for the sports associations where Penticton and Summerland are combined, like soccer, for example, how do they deal with that? Do Summerland kids get a deal or on their fees they pay to the association, or de facto are Summerland parents subsidizing Penticton parents?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Holmes, I don't know how, say, for example, the Pinnacles Football Club who run the soccer program here in Summerland, I don't know if there's a difference in the rate that they charge the Summerland, the programs that happen in Summerland, if there's a reduction. However, when they rent the fields here for the Summerland program, they are not charged, but when they are hosting Summerland kids in Penticton, say for a game, if they're playing a game there, they are charged there.
Okay, thank you. And another question, if I may?
Yes, go ahead, thanks.
So, and then for the rental of indoor facilities, youth program pays less than adult programming in principle, is that correct?
That is correct.
So shouldn't we be applying the same principle to the Arts and Cultural Center, that if it's a youth programming, it should be less, the rental rate should be less than if it's an adult program? And the theater, for that matter?
Through Madam Mayor, theater has not had a youth booking rate in the past. However, if that's something that council would like us to implement as a new fee moving forward, the rates are fairly low, but we could look at a similar subsidized percentage decrease for youth for the theater. And I can look at, when I come back again, for a youth rate for the Arts and Cultural Center as well.
I think perhaps for the theater, that's something when you have the discussions with the school board and the Arts Council, you could maybe raise that for the theater, but I'd certainly like to see that for the Arts and Cultural Center. If we have a principle, we ought to apply it across the board.
Sure.
Another question, if I may? Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
I'll just check. Is there anybody else that has a question? Okay. Yes, please go ahead, Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. And then I was also wondering, for the Arts and Cultural Center, why is there a different rate for whether you have 50 or more people involved? And does the attendance or number of participation, do you have different rates for other facilities? I just wondering what the thinking is behind that.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. It is consistent with our, for larger spaces. So for our arena banquet room, we have a similar format of the more people that are booking the space typically requires more setup and cleanup and involvement. And so was based on the arena banquet room breakdown of size and increase in cost.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Laurie. Could you tell us how the proposed user fee increases align with actual costs of, say the pool or the health club? I know that they were fairly deeply subsidized now, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. I'm just wondering if how the proposed user fee increases align with that, with the actual costs.
Are you suggesting with like actual subsidy, or are you suggesting as far as getting closer to market?
I'm wondering, maybe I shouldn't have said anything at all about subsidy. I'm wondering if, as we look at these proposed fee increases, if that is, if it still leaves us in a position where we are heavily subsidizing recreational services, I guess, or if this is slowly bringing us closer to what the actual costs are.
It is slowly bringing us closer. However, the difference, I believe we calculated about $25,000 across the board would be the net increase in the revenues that we would achieve through these increases. So it's a very slow reduction of the subsidy.
Okay. I think that the subsidy, especially when we're talking about, you know, we're always talking about healthy lifestyles and inclusion, making sure that things are accessible. I think that having the subsidies to help families that can't necessarily, especially if they have a number of children, can't necessarily afford to pay for, you know, regular pool use or whatever it happens to be. So I think that's important. I was just kind of curious on, I guess, how far behind we are and what the effect will be in terms of how quickly we will get to something that is, you know, more in line with, is still subsidized, but more in line with something that is reflects the actual costs of this. That's all. You've answered my question.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, Graham has his hand up too.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This, I guess I'll direct this to Laurie. Laurie, on your slide deck, slide 2, there's the recreation revenues and expenses chart that describes subsidy. I think that was at the time this last came to council, if I'm remembering correctly, but perhaps what we could do when this comes back to council in bylaw form is just bring also an updated chart of this nature to show the subsidy post-treatment, as it were, with the new fees.
Thank you, Graham. Yeah, and just as far as that chart's reflecting a just over $700,000 subsidy in 2019. Just to give you a sense of the overall subsidy of parks for recreation.
Yeah, substantial. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Lori? Councillor Barkwell.
Yeah, was Lori looking for comments, guidance on the charging extra for nighttime at the ball fields? She commented about $4 an hour and whether we should be charging.
About the lights?
Yes.
Yeah, she did mention that. If you have a comment, please.
Oh, I guess one thing I wouldn't know is it really, would it be worth the extra administration time to, you know, I mean, it gets dark at different times, lights go on at different times, figuring out the charges and stuff. It doesn't appear on the face of it to be material, but I don't know. What,
Does it make sense administratively, Lori?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through to Councilor Barkwell. I didn't put it in as a recommendation at this point because of the administration costs and you know, the booking administration to do that, turning them on and off. It was, you know, I didn't do the calculation of the time and what that equates to, but so that's why it's not included. But if council wanted us to try to collect that fee and consider that increase in administration time, we could do that.
well, I guess,
What were your feelings
I
on
guess
that?
my comment is, I don't think we should bother at this time unless council staff came back with a recommendation and reasons why.
Well, it appears that they don't really have a recommendation, and we heard a little bit about the administration costs. So, but yeah, thanks for bringing that forward. Is there anything else? There's a recommendation there to receive for information and to direct staff to bring forward the fees and charges at a later meeting. Anybody interested in bringing that forward? Councillor Van Alphen, and seconder, Councillor Holmes, thank you. Further discussion on this? I'll call the question. All in favor? And any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Now on to 7.5, electric vehicle charging stations, equipment wrapping, and this is for Tammy.
Good afternoon, Council. As outlined in your package, as part of the electric vehicle charging network expansion, we have the opportunity to add decorative wrap to equipment in the vicinity of the charging stations. And staff are seeking Council's direction on how to approach this matter. The background and discussion have been provided in your report, and I'm happy to go through any of the details with you if asked. Essentially, staff are asking three questions. First, is Council interested in decorative wrapping at this time? If yes, on which equipment? And there's both an aesthetic and budget consideration in that question, and we've included some images in attachment 1 to help give you an idea of the options there. And then if Council is interested in some or all of the equipment being wrapped, we're also asking for direction on how staff should proceed with the design options, with the two main possibilities being either vendor provided images or working with community partners. Staff have provided a recommendation for your consideration, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Councillor Holmes.
Thank you. So when we had the Cultural Plan Task Force a number of years ago, there was discussion at the time about wrapping utility boxes. And the kind of consensus then was that what a lot of communities were doing in the valley was we're putting those kind of generic pictures of fruit all around their boxes. And the thinking was that they looked kind of tacky, and then as they faded over time, they looked even worse. And then so you'd have to consider that we would need to make decision on having a budget item to replenish those every once in a while. During the time of the task force, the Arts Council put forward an idea of having local artists paint utility boxes. And I just emailed you something just now, a design from Stephanie Seaton at the time. So that would be, again, there'd be a cost there, and it didn't really go any forward. Didn't go forward but it was certainly got a lot more support than those generic wraps. And they also considered, and I believe the Heritage Committee at the time also discussed the idea of having historical photos on utility boxes. And that's something I think if we wanted to go forward with that, that's what I would support right now, because you could just go to the museum and find the appropriate historical photo for the ones in Lower Town. You can get Lower Town photos, and if they fade, probably nobody noticed because they're all faded anyways. So that's what I would suggest is to get some historical photos as wraps.
Thank you, Councillor Holmes. Councillor Trainer.
I really like the idea of historical photos acting as wraps. I've been to other communities, and sometimes they'll have a photo of like an old building in front of the new building, and it's kind of neat to be able to see the difference. The only thing is, and this question is for Councillor Holmes, were you talking about wrapping all of the utility boxes or just the charging stations? What do you think about that? Because I noticed one of the photos that we have here shows like wrappings for the garbage bins. I don't know if we need to go that far, but certainly the charging stations I think would be really interesting to wrap in historical photos.
Well, I kind of agreed with, I think, the staff recommendation on that the stations themselves were already colored, but it's all those other boxes around them, which are really ugly, that, could be wrapped. But I mean, I don't have a strong opinion either way on that.
Councillor Barkole and then Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I agree with what Councillor Holmes has been saying, and in particular with regard to the charging stations themselves. They look pretty good. They have some features to them and such, and it might look a little bit funny to wrap them. But the associated transformer boxes and things, historical photos sounds better than pictures of fruit. I could go along with that idea. If Councillor Holmes wants to make a motion to that respect, I'd second it. The only question I have is how far do we go? Which ones are we doing? Are we going to do all of them in the community, or just the ones that are nearby the charging stations? Is there some discussion on that? Or is it...
I can try to answer that if I may, Madam Mayor. So at this time, staff are only seeking direction in relation to the infrastructure surrounding the EV chargers, simply because we have this opportunity through the existing grant to have that work subsidized. However, staff are aware that the district as a utility does not have a broader wrapping program that many other municipalities or utilities do. And so if there's a direction from council to develop something like that, staff can take that away as a separate action item.
Councillor Van Elfen and then Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know this conversation was a conversation when I was on council once upon a time. The green transformer boxes, covering them because they're quite the eyesores, or can be. I agree with Councillor Holmes. I have no problem with historical photos. I just want to run something by our sustainability coordinator. Do you think it's too much of an effort, or to ask maybe, like 3 sides could be historical photos, 1 side could be a service organization that sponsored that or paid for that one? Is that a possibility? Rotary, Kinsman, maybe they want to pay for one of those, and they get a little bit of advertising out of it. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Thank you. Through the mayor, certainly it's a opportunity for local businesses or other organizations to sponsor some of this. The only consideration at this time is if we're looking to include some of this work under our current grant opportunity and to subsidize that or offset some of those costs through the grant, this work has to be done before the end of June. So this is a little bit of an 11th hour request and discussion. The staff have been focused on the main part of the install, but we had a little bit of leftover budget through some savings we were able to realize. And so this opportunity kind of came up. So one thing that we've outlined in the staff report is, you know, if council wants to have a broader discussion about a wrapping program and other opportunities, we could certainly look beyond that timeline and just forego the potential to use some grant funding to offset the costs and come back with a more fulsome program proposal.
Councillor Holmes?
Yeah, I'd see this, since we have the funding to do this, and in response to Councillor Barkle's question, I would say let's just do the charging station transformers and kiosks first and see how they look and see how the community responds, and we can view this kind of as a pilot before, and then we can make the decision of whether we want to, you know, look at doing other utility boxes and whatnot.
Any other questions or comments? Could I have someone bring, did you have a, no, you didn't, no. Could I have someone bring forward a motion, please? Councillor Holmes?
That staff be directed to add decorative wrappings of historical Summerland historical photos to the electrical equipment in the vicinity of the district's public electric vehicle charging stations as described in the May 10, 21 report from the Sustainability Alternative Energy Coordinator, and that staff utilize vendor provide, oh no, not that part.
Not that part. And then did you want to exclude the actual charging stations in your motion?
Yeah, I don't know if I need to, because it was. Yeah, I think the motion, the staff recommendation does that, no?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the motion and seconded by Councillor Barkle. Thank you. Any further discussion on this? Councillor Holmes.
Yeah, just that you could probably approach the museum for the photos, I think.
Councillor Traynor?
Sorry, just to clarify then, at those locations, all of the utility boxes around the charging station would be wrapped, and then the charging stations would be left as is in their blue color that they come in. Is that correct? Okay. Great, thank you.
Councillor Patton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to see that, or to ensure that we don't go over budget, that this isn't done and then staff comes back to us asking for more money because perhaps the quoting or the pricing wasn't precise. So I'd say that they use the money that they have and that's in the report, but if it goes over budget, that they have to come back to council for in regards to the shortfalls, if I may.
Okay. As budgeted or something, can that be added to the
Absolutely.
motion?
Thank you.
Councillor Holmes?
Yeah, I'd make the friendly amendment if that's the best way to do it.
Okay, great. Seconded by Councillor Barkle. Councillor Holmes?
And I suppose if it comes to that, we don't have to wrap them all. So.
Right. Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll call the question on the amendment. All in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously. And then on the motion as amended, all in favor? Great, thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Tammy. And the next one is yours as well, 7.6, Fortis BC Custom Efficiency Program, District Facility Processes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As outlined in the staff report, as part of our efforts to implement the corporate energy and emissions management plan, staff became aware of a current funding opportunity through Fortis BC to support the study of energy efficiency and emission reductions within our building processes, specifically at the water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant, and the arena and curling club. We've already previously studied the envelopes of the buildings, or the bones, and now we're looking to study the operational equipment, the guts of the buildings, in these 3 specific cases. This funding opportunity through Fortis is a 75% funding with a 25% bonus available if we implement any of the energy conservation measures outlined. In order to secure this opportunity, the district needs to commit 100% of the funding, with the understanding that we'll have that 75% rebate, and that's been pre-approved, and that the 25% would be available if we move forward with implementing any of the measures. As such, staff are seeking approval to use the Climate Action Reserve funds in support of applying to this program. And the policy supports the use of those funds in order to identify energy conservation measures, also to establish an opportunity for us to apply for the capital funding that would support the implementation of these measures in the future. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Questions, Council? Okay, I see no hands raised. Oh, Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I noticed in our quarterly update, we talked about the arena assessment. So I guess my question is, if we're already going to be spending money for an arena assessment, which I would assume through that assessment is going to be dealing with the equipment within that arena, are we not kind of double dipping with Fortis to do the arena again, or on top of that, or does it work in are they married where each are going to be doing their own thing? I'm just wondering about spending that kind of money if it's going to be a duplicate service. Thanks.
Thanks. Through the mayor. So we're absolutely coordinating with the recreation department to make sure that we are being as efficient as possible with our dollars, not duplicating efforts and sharing information. The facility assessment is more tied to the building structure, looking at the building itself rather than this operational guts equipment. And so we're working together though to make sure that one is complementing the other there. Absolutely.
Okay, seeing no other hands raised, would someone like to bring forward a motion, please? Councillor Van Alphen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That staff be directed to add, no, that's the wrong one. Sorry. I'm gonna add decorative wrap again. That staff be directed to proceed with facilities process study under the Fortis BC Custom Efficiency Program as outlined in the May 10th, 2021 report from the Sustainability and Alternative Energy Coordinator, and then up to $51,685 be allocated from the Climate Action Reserve in support of the participation in this program, and then staff prepare a bylaw to amend Financial Plan 2021-2025 bylaw number 2021/001 in to incorporate this change.
Thank you, Councillor Van Alphen. Seconder? Councillor Holmes? Any further discussion? Oh, Councillor Barkle.
So just to make sure I understand this program, if they'll do the study and we'll pay that amount, and then if there's a program that say costs $25,000 to do some sort of energy efficient measure in the arena, they would give us the $25,000 to do that energy efficiency upgrade. So we wind up, and then that $25,000 presumably would be get us at least $25,000 or $26,000 worth of energy savings. Is that basically the, how we expect this to work?
Tammy, maybe you could clarify?
Sure, thanks through the mayor. So let's, the actual amounts of the studies are outlined in your report, but just for simplicity, let's say one of the studies is $10,000. So we would be eligible upon completion of the study for a rebate of $7,500. So $2,500 would still be on our plate, as it were. Now, if in the study, they're going to come up with some recommendations similar to previous energy studies that we've had done. And let's say one of those measures was $25,000 for us to complete. We would be responsible for the $25,000, and then that would make us eligible for that $2,500 that we still had on our plate to get that back.
Oh.
Now, however, by completing the study, we become what we call shovel ready. And so funders, including Fortis and others, like to see that you've done some sort of feasibility study or upfront work in order to qualify for then capital funds. So we expect that this would unlock further opportunities for us on the capital side. However, there's no guarantee of that. We just would expect that based on our knowledge of other funding programs, including Fortis's own supportive capital.
So we get that 75% back regardless of whether we actually ever undertake any improvements or something. Yeah, okay.
Good. Any other questions? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you. And anybody wanting to speak from the public or the media? No. Okay, thank you. So could I have Councillor bring forward a resolution to close this meeting to the public? Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Holmes, thank you. All in favor?